Well, that brought you to New York, that conference. It brought a lot of other people here.
No,
You were coming
you
through
see,
on other matters.
he keeps writing to me
Yeah.
very often.
Yeah.
At one stage, they wanted to make a deal with my journal.
Yeah, I see.
published some of their things also.
Oh, good.
He again talked to me today about this.
Good deal. Welcome. Welcome very much to Conversation, where it's a pleasure to welcome to the program a friend of the universe, J.C. Kapur. He's an from the country of India, and he is a futurist, and he wears many, many hats. And we've just met here in early September at the World Forum that was being held here in New York City. And we've had an incredible conversation. We want to share some of his insights. And Mr. Kapur, welcome very much to Conversations indeed.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Yeah.
I have very old links with New York City.
Oh, good. I didn't, yeah.
I studied at Cornell University.
That's right. You were at Cornell. That was upstate.
Upstate.
Yeah.
And I used to come to New York very often.
Yeah.
And thereafter, in various capacities which I have had since, I have visited the United States over 50 times.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I know the country, know the people. I have great regard and affection, but I have also got
some reservations. Yes, I can understand. Well, that's exactly the way I feel about this country too. Maybe you could share some of your own, you know, where you were raised and born.
Yes, I was brought up in India, in what is now part of Pakistan. I was educated as a scientist and as an engineer, completing the studies at the very famous Indian Institute of Science. Thereafter, I came to the United States, and I studied Master of Science in Engineering at Cornell University. I worked here for a little while as a consultant. Then I went back to India to start from the lowest ladder of the engineering industry, the area in which I was interested. But I would say, as we say it in India, it is a good fortune that I rose up very soon, and before long I was the head of the company, and a few years later I was the head of the entire industry in that area.
And the industry that you were
industry was originally, it was refrigeration, air conditioning, instrumentation.
That should be a big industry in
India.
It
was
a
big, massive industry in India. I was the president of the industry for many years. I set up some of the biggest manufacturing units in the country in the industry. So I did all that. And then
if I may, you're an entrepreneur. Were you doing that as a standalone entity, or were you in partnership, or in partnership with another country, international company? How did that be done?
I was doing it firstly for big corporations, for companies, very important companies in India, like the Birlas. I worked with them for many years, and I set up a number of companies for them. Then I joined Larsen and Toubro, which is India's most sophisticated and one of the largest engineering companies. I was on their management team. And then thereafter, one day I decided the time has come that I must do much bigger things.
Bigger than this refrigeration?
Bigger than the refrigeration, bigger than Larsen and Toubro.
But your company, you were manufacturing the air conditioning units there in India?
In India, everything.
They imported and manufactured?
Everything manufactured in India.
From the ground up?
The ground up.
Okay, you're an entrepreneur. An Indian entrepreneur.
That's right. And then I set up a group of companies, small companies of my own. And next step was to go and set up the Kapur solar farms, which is entirely operated by renewable sources of energy.
Wow, that's okay. And it
is one of my activities which is known internationally. And I worked in a very senior capacity, president of the Solar Energy Society of India.
When did you take that initiative?
I took that initiative in the early 60s.
In the early 60s?
Starting with an address to the United Nations Conference on Renewable Sources of Energy in Rome in 1961.
Were you tied into the Club of Rome? Or
no, kind of I was at that time a working manager and industrialist. So I had very little time for other activities. But I changed the whole style of life from 1970 onwards.
From 1970
onwards, I shifted from all my industrial activities, and I started working on issues related to renewable sources of energy. So the first step was to set up the Kapur solar farms. Then I started in the year 75, 25 years ago,
Yes.
I spoke on India in the year 2000, a
Right.
series of lectures.
Because you are a futurist.
I was a
And you have
futurist.
been, yeah.
I started getting into the futurist thing.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And the moment I did that, India year 2000, all of a sudden J.C. Kapur started being known in India.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Because I was one of the first few people who started talking about the long-range
A
situation.
long-range look at the
Look at
country, that it
country,
was much needed.
what
right,
it needed.
To get a sense of
And
perspective.
amazingly, if you look at that paper today,
Yes.
you will find I was pretty close to being right.
You were darn near prescient,
Yeah,
prescient,
the-
you know, in
but
terms
very
of
nice, very close.
that. Yeah, right.
And then I now, in the recently,
Yes.
I have given few major efforts in the future. I have written 5 books during this period.
Yes. Uh-huh.
I have written now my latest activity is India, a Cosmic Vision for the 6th millennium.
Uh-huh.
And even more recent,
The sixth millennium. Yes, I
because
understand.
it is
That
India's
culture
6th
goes back
millennia.
a
Culture
tad,
goes
right.
back 5,000 years.
Yes, sir.
And then the most recently,
Uh-huh.
few weeks ago,
Uh-huh.
I gave a major lecture on the future of India, where was it heading?
Uh-huh.
And there I dealt with the entire politico, socio, techno-economic
Yeah.
and spiritual context in which the future of the country must be.
And I think the president took careful note of that, no?
Everybody took
The
note of
president,
that.
yeah.
They have taken note. They all took note of
Right.
this. It has been taken very note of it quite
Yeah.
extensively in India.
And as you say, you've been to the United States 50 times, and you're a friend of the earth, and you're in a very real sense, and you've got a very large cosmic or cosmopolitan view of the world. You're a comprehensivist.
Not only in the United States, I have visited over 90 countries all over the world.
90 countries. Yeah.
All over the world, in Latin America, Europe, Asia, some parts of Africa, Australia. I have visited a lot of these countries in various capacities.
Yeah, right.
Some as an industrialist, some as a futurist,
Yeah.
some as a solar scientist, and now also as a publisher.
Yes,
I
because you have a
publish
journal. What's it called, the journal?
World
again?
Affair Journal,
Right.
quarterly.
Yeah.
So-
How long has that been coming out?
For 3 years,
3 years now.
it has
okay.
become a very significant journal.
And that's a focus of attention of comprehensive understanding of what the planet needs. Right?
What is happening in the world today.
And yeah,
We publish all views.
yeah.
We do not censor any view.
Mm-hmm.
You can write anything, you send it to us. If it is of the quality,
Yeah.
we will publish.
As long as it's up to quality intellectual. work.
intellectual.
Yeah. And we were talking yesterday at this incredible conference. It seems to me incredible, not having been to one, the World Forum that was called, and they had a couple of thousand intellectuals and governmental and private sector people gathered at the Hilton Hotel in conjunction with the UN Summit of World Leaders. 188 nations we have in the world now, or states. And we were talking, and among other things that really intrigued me in our first conversation as we met, was that you were a long-term, close personal friend of that friend of the universe, our Buckminster Fuller.
That is right.
And I wonder if you might be able to share that,
Yes,
that association,
yeah.
and how, because I have a special admiration in terms of his comprehensive reading of the evolution of universal
Yes,
consciousness.
I think I remember a number of things about Mr. Fuller.
Mm-hmm.
He was brought to my farm by an architect friend many years ago, and thereafter this friendship developed.
Mm-hmm.
We often met here and in India, and he has had very serious conversations with me. You know, one of the things which I do remember that I was here at the time when the World Future Society gave him an award, and I was one of the speakers who complimented him.
That would have been Barbara Marx Hubbard.
That
Right,
was
I think-
done by the World Future Society, Coronation, others, but there were a number of senators
Yeah.
and congressmen, a lot of
That
people.
would have been
were-
down in Maryland there. right?
no,
Oh,
it was in
Connecticut.
one of the hotels in Hotel Washington.
Yeah,
I think,
that's where the
Washington.
ceremony, but it was Barbara Marx Hubbard, I think, that was
That-
behind that.
So that happened, and I spoke, and I criticized, disagreed with many of the
You
things.
disagreed with
with
Buckminster Fuller?
Buckminster Fuller, particularly on the small, on the that you can more with less.
This we'll want to talk about with you, because I would like to get that straight.
Yeah,
Because that's an
more
important,
with less.
that's an incredibly important issue, yeah.
But more with less is, you know, when you talk in material terms,
Yes,
or the second law of thermodynamics,
right.
there can
yeah.
never be more with less.
Well,
It depends upon how you count it.
I see.
And but when you talk of more and less in the larger human context,
Yeah.
where the spiritual, the psychic, the intellectual, and all those factors come in.
I see.
Now, what price are you paying in getting more with less has yet to be calculated.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's a term he, if I recall, and I didn't know him well, but I knew him a little bit, it was ephemeralization. He used that word. I think he was referring to technological, the elegance of technological design, which means you can get more material benefit from ever smaller use of resources.
That's right.
And that could be a great hope in terms of the ecological problems confronting the world.
To that extent, it is very important.
Yes.
But I would like to add to this,
Yeah.
that today, from my own experience, I am coming to this viewpoint after having been a very reasonably successful person
Yes.
in material terms,
Yes.
as an industrialist, as a manager, as a scientist, having been reasonably successful. I am of the opinion that now in the entire human context, there are larger things which are more important.
Yes, yes, yes.
The inner man is far more important than the outer man. Outer man is only for a short period. Inner man is bigger.
So there are larger cosmic considerations.
Man is a part of the great cosmic universe.
Right, right.
In which there are billions of galaxies and stars.
Yes, that's correct.
Of which Earth is one of the very, very small planets.
That's right.
On this there are 6 billion people.
And growing.
And growing. Now the question is this: you may be very big in terms of this planet, but what about in the context of the universe?
It's minuscule.
So that is what is important.
Yeah.
The context of the universe.
Yeah.
And in that context, I feel we are insignificant. And
well,
okay.
maybe very small, but insignificant is not quite the case. Not totally insignificant, but all but.
It is, if you
I
take
mean, we are here.
No, if you take the cosmic reality.
Oh, yes.
In terms of the total cosmos.
I know.
You know, I must tell you a little story.
Sir.
Somebody
Yes.
said I was very important.
Yes.
And his friend said, do you know that there are billions of stars on this planet? And do you know that you are living on this planet where there are 6 billion people?
Yes.
And then you know what he did? He pulled one hair from his head. He said, you are less important than this in terms of what we are talking about.
Okay. But
so therefore we have
let's
to
make note that it's there.
Is there.
Yeah. And
we are, what is important is our consciousness.
Yeah. Okay.
What is important is our spirit, because that relates to the cosmic reality.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
not our physical selves.
I see, I see.
Not our military power, not our money. What relates to the cosmic dimension is our spiritual dimension.
Yeah, that's right. That's the more important thing. And Buckminster Fuller, did you have an accord with him? He would, it seems to me, and if you can set me straight if I'm off cut, because I would really like to get him straight, but he used to posit, if I'm not mistaken, and he's coming from a largely Western tradition. But he was positing an a priori mysterious design to the structure of universal mind. He used to use that term. There was an intelligence design in universe, and he said it was made up of a series of hierarchical resonances that interaccommodate systems in universe. Does that accord with your sense of the cosmos?
Yes, it does accord.
Because you, if I may, you have an appreciation that perhaps we here do not have sufficiently of the incredibly rich tradition of the Hindu tradition, which approaches these cosmic questions differently than the monotheistic religions of the West. Rudyard Kipling said, East is East, West is West, and so forth. But maybe you could address some of these large issues. And then one last thing, if I could. You also were very conversant and did many reviews of another great systems thinker. That would be Teilhard Chardin.
That's right.
So maybe you could spell some of these things together.
Basically, what is happening is that in this entire my recent close contact with all the thinkers on the issues related to the larger cosmic reality and relationship to the human development
worldwide. Yes, sir.
And the process of human elevation, the process of human evolution, the process of evolution of man, not only in material terms, but also in psychic, in intellectual, and spiritual terms.
As a part of the evolution of
A-
universal
of
consciousness
universe.
itself.
Now, my big
Yeah.
problem today is
Yes, sir.
I feel that while we are evolving rapidly on the material context, the evolution of the human beings on the spiritual and the other aesthetic and other is only getting subservient to the material
The
context.
material, yeah.
So the-
Materialism is rampant.
Rampant.
Yes.
And the context of this is creating difficulty.
Yeah.
Now, this is, but what Buckminster Fuller
Yes.
did not
God bless him.
did not translate or did not express
Mhm.
in very serious terms.
Mhm.
He did not use the spiritual context, but what he was doing expressed the spiritual context in a different way.
And he was a man in a certain sense. He wasn't an existentialist, or he was not just a monad or something, chance and necessity. He believed in the notion of an intelligent design.
Design.
And so there's an intelligence and design in universe. And that's an
Immediately you do-
important unifying factor of people
That's
of
right.
spiritual
Immediately you
concern.
accept the important unifying design.
Yes.
Then that is where I go back to the Indian context
Yes.
of Rig Veda,
Yes.
where the hymn of creation
Yes.
talks about the same thing,
Yeah.
but only with one difference.
Uh-huh.
The last sentence of the hymn of the creation,
Yes.
what really happened, the great God knows.
Mhm.
And
Only.
then, only knows, but
Yeah.
perhaps he knows not.
What would you, if you were to characterize, let's say, take this question on frontally, the West and the East, and so the West has been very concerned in a certain sense with seeing consciousness in a certain sense growing out of matter through an evolutionary process, outward going and so on. And the Eastern, if I'm wrong, set me straight or explain it, the Hindu tradition, the Eastern tradition, is it begins with consciousness, and other matters come from that overarching consciousness, either Atman or what.
That is right.
Yeah,
But not only that.
and is this a difference of understanding the cosmic order that is important for us to understand? Are there coming to be a blending of these in a way, or do you think this is an important question that confronts
what's
us?
happening is that with the Cartesian separation of the material from the spiritual,
Yeah, the mind
from
and body.
mind from the body,
Yeah.
what has happened is the body has started running very fast and mind is static and is only running on the material dimension and not in the other dimension.
Why? Why is this the
Because
case?
the separation, the question there is, this is a question which you can see very much in the United States.
Yes.
The material element has become so powerful
And in the world?
in the world in different context, in
Yes.
different ways.
Yes.
Not in the same level.
Yes.
But yes, everywhere,
Uh-huh.
but not to the same extent. Now, basically, now you talked about Teilhard de Chardin.
Yes, please.
Now, Teilhard de Chardin was a great scholar.
Yeah.
In many ways, he opened for me many dimensions which were unknown to me before.
I see.
And I would therefore, I am grateful to Teilhard de Chardin.
Yeah.
But then I read all his books
You have and reviewed them.
and reviewed them
Yes.
in various newspapers
Phenomenon
and
of
papers.
Man and,
Phenomenon of Man, the future of man,
Yeah.
the divine,
Building of the
the
earth.
milieu divine and
Yeah.
all that.
Yes.
kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
So I've gone through all that.
Yes.
But then what happened is this. Do you know that during his lifetime,
Yeah.
the Holy Father, Pope, did not allow
I know he had difficulty with Rome. Yes. No, he was a Jesuit. No.
His book.
Yeah.
And then when they published his books,
Yeah.
what I find is
Yeah.
that he ultimately takes the solution of all the problems into the Vatican, which stopped the publication of his books. So therefore, that a little bit gave me the impression that while, and then the other important point where I disagreed with him, I must say that.
All right.
He said that the future of mankind will only be decided and emerge from the West and not from the East, because East is more concerned with divinity, East is more concerned with spirituality,
Yeah.
while the West is going material.
James Joyce said the East, the West shall shake the East awake
Okay,
while you have the night for the morn.
moon.
But there will be a blending. Yeah. But Chardin was interested in technology, and he saw technique and technology and extended consciousness, which in a certain sense is technology.
But
and that is sort of a Western.
No, but what he talked about, what he talked about was that he thought that the evolution, human evolution on the spiritual level, will proceed simultaneously with the human level on the material. And when these two reach the acme, the ultimate noosphere,
the
omega point, when they reach the omega point, that will be the ultimate realization of man.
And we will come into a new relationship, transcendent to human consciousness. Yeah.
But my worry is
what?
That the question is this, that what you see today happening all around the world.
Yes, what do we see?
We see so much of violence, so much of dislocation of people, so much of poverty, so much of displacement of human beings. What all over the world. You travel everywhere and you see all that.
It's horror.
And
There's
when
a horror.
you see that, then you ask yourself a question. We may be going material, but what are we doing? What is our spirit doing for the benefit of all these billions of people around the world who are on the verge of starvation?
It's an incredible thing. I saw in your paper, which I've read. I appreciate very much. I read the paper, and the figures. There were figures that we have now 400 individuals whose wealth, 450 people whose wealth
is half the world's wealth,
is equal to the wealth of half the population of the world. There's a great deal of disequilibrium there, right? But I'm wondering on the philosophical level, when Chardin, and again, and also Buckminster Fuller was very interested in design, his geodesic concepts and building good design and that sort of thing. But with Chardin, he had the notion of the noosphere, with the hydrosphere and the lithosphere, and these things emerge, and then the noosphere would emerge, and he said it was in a certain sense like the growing of an electronic intelligence, of the integrated intelligence. And some people see the internet and these developments, which are growing so rapidly now, as being in a certain sense in keeping with what he saw as evolving the noospheric world that's developing. Do you understand? But you understand his bias in that, or
no? But I would put it slightly differently.
Okay, fine.
And that is that while I agree, I accept that he has said this. While I accept that there are certain developments, electronics and others, which are taking place.
Yes, rapidly.
Exponentially, they are taking place. But the question there is this: if you were to really sit down and see how much of these are steps forward, or how much of these are just of the level and quality which have no relevance to the growth of the industry. In fact, to make a very serious statement, I think quite a lot of this is junk.
A lot of the content.
I did not know this before. The moment I put a computer in my house, and my secretary started placing before me piles and piles of papers I don't even want to look at. I said, what the hell is this going on? She said, this is the information which is coming through from all over the place.
And it's building up every day.
So therefore, my question is this: the infrastructure of the future cannot be built on information alone.
That information has to be
supported by
and patterned.
It should be knowledge revolution.
Well, information can become, data can become information can become knowledge.
No, there
are
three levels.
Yes, sir.
One is the level of information. Now, if you take all the information together, you will find that 90% of the information, if you were to categorize it, you do not need it. It is only to promote things, to promote goods.
You're talking now on the internet. You're not talking about the evolution of consciousness itself.
No, I'm not talking. I'm talking of the internet.
Because
I'm talking of that level to build it to that.
Right. Okay.
So that information which is coming to you is of much less value than you think, and quite a lot of this has become promotion. Now, once
sales
promotion,
just pushing and more ads all over the place. Materialism is terrible.
If I get 20 pieces a day, 19 relate to that.
Trying to sell you something.
Give you money, take your money. There's something of that kind.
Right.
Now, these kind of things, if you cannot build an infrastructure of the future on information of this kind. So I see 3 stages of evolution.
All right.
in
Forward from here?
Forward from here.
Yes.
I am working on one of them.
Yes.
Looking at one of them.
Solar?
No,
sorry.
no.
Sorry.
Information.
Yes.
If you add truth to information, it becomes knowledge.
Truth. Now, there are many different ideas of
No,
truth.
there is one truth.
There is
really,
but one.
the real basic truth.
Okay.
The one truth, if you add, though, supposing there are 100 different things,
Yeah.
there will be 100 different kinds of truth.
Uh-huh.
But ultimately, there is a truth
There is a truth that does exist.
that does exist.
And to the degree that we can
No, like
adhere
for
to that,
la-
it's good.
Like, for instance, now,
Yeah.
Newton, the gravity, force of gravity has existed from the beginning of time.
Yes.
We only learned about it when the apple fell on the head of Newton.
Yeah. And then we got,
So therefore, that became truth.
and we only learned about the weak and strong force relatively recently.
Relatively
And the
recently.
genome we've only just finally sequenced.
We are
yeah.
doing
Yeah.
it.
And DNA, we didn't understand the mechanism.
That's right. So
Yeah.
therefore, what the
Knowledge.
second state is, therefore, our aim for the future, for all thinking person, should not be just information.
No.
It should be knowledge. And then, when to knowledge?
Now, excuse me if I may.
Uh,
Information is differentiated from knowledge by a relationship to truth,
truth.
the knowledge
Supposing
contained.
there are 100 different patterns given to you,
Yes. All right.
20 different things are given to you. Now we have to see which one is the truth. And the moment you can put your finger on that real truth, it becomes knowledge.
How do we discern that?
It's a process of human elevation, human consciousness.
At a higher level.
Higher level.
Could I introduce something here, perhaps? Buckminster Fuller used to say, let's just Buckminster Fuller, but let's say another one, Toffler.
Toffler, Alvin Toffler. I know
Future
he's
shock.
a very good friend of
He's a
mine.
friend of yours, yeah. He's a futurist, or Norbert Wiener in the world of
Wiener,
cybernetics. And he said that in cybernetic language, in a systems analysis, that information overload within a system, you can be very confused by information overload, but information overload permits pattern recognition between systems at another level.
That's right.
So you
therefore,
can come above it, so that there's and we are uniquely suited at pattern recognizing the human consciousnesses, so that the information overload, which seems superfluous because you're in the system, if you get a higher level, you can see that this relates to that and this and that. So it allows for a systems understanding at a higher level, and it's from this higher level understanding that we want to try and understand information and data.
So therefore, this process of reaching the higher level is a process of the elevation of human consciousness.
Yes, sir. Or of universal consciousness, of which we're a part.
So it's this process itself of converting information to knowledge is a process of human consciousness. Now, if to this knowledge which you have developed to, evolved to, if you add your psyche, intuition, and your spirituality, then it becomes wisdom.
Yeah, that's wisdom. That's what we seek after. Yeah.
So therefore, this is where the Indian thought,
all right,
the thinking of India, scores. Because not only they recognize these various levels of growing human consciousness, but they have even provided techniques of how to achieve that higher level of consciousness in all kinds of environmental situations.
You have in the Hindu tradition, if I may, or in the Buddhist tradition, you have the idea of the bodhisattva.
Bodhisattva, the basic thing is the highest level of realization in consciousness is called nirvana. Now what I am trying to say, nobody ever reaches there. You may have one Lord Buddha reaching the level of nirvana.
Right.
But all of us, in our own way, in the process of elevating our consciousness and elevating ourselves, we are clutching to, from information we must clutch to knowledge, and from knowledge we must aim for the wisdom.
Yes, that's perhaps what
that is the process.
That would be part of the purpose of what biological or conscious or human purpose in universe is to find that and to bring design, intelligent design, in keeping with the evolution of consciousness itself. And we're at a time perhaps of transition. I wonder if I can try and follow through on these. But the notion of pattern recognition again, or Buckminster Fuller talking about systems analysis, where you have the involvement of the parts of a system all operating maximally in a certain sense. And if I could digress for 1 minute, we heard Kofi Annan at the Secretary General. We're talking about internet and so forth, but he said there's fully 1/2 of the world's population, talk about a digital divide, 3 billion souls have never in all of their life made a single phone call.
Oh, that's right.
They're not plugged in, they're not tied in. So that if you have a realization of a new level of consciousness collectively of the whole, not just some few, not a few, but the whole, then the bodhisattva notion is that they are enlightened, but they would come back and make sure that all of the human society, let's say as part of it, would be involved in a process of a liberated process, and then that would be a resonating relationship to the universe at another level. But you have to have all of the people involved, just like DNA. We have 10 trillion cells, and all of them are in communication.
Yes,
and too many of the human population are oppressed by social conditions. Do you understand? A collective resonancy would interaccommodate us to the universe in a way that would involve all human beings. And Bucky always thought a whole system.
No, that is right. But basically, I agree with you, and I feel that the only problem with the present paradigm,
yes, sir,
in which we are living in, is that it tends to go on centralizing.
Goes on what?
Centralizing.
Centralizing.
The whole world, as you see, millions of villages.
Yeah.
People in India alone, there are 600,000 villages, with population varying from 50 people, 100 people to 5,000 people.
Yes, yes.
Now, in these villages, and similarly in Africa, in other parts of the world, Latin America.
Yes.
Now, wherever there are these villages, there are traditions, there is a culture.
There's a culture.
There's a culture. The whole system evolved together.
We talk biodiversity, there's cultural diversity.
Now, the question is this, in that system, where they move in a small group, telephone is not the most important thing.
I understand.
You know, I can give you one example.
Yes.
When our great leader, Mahatma Gandhi, before died, from New Delhi, where there was no television at that time, and within
no, it didn't exist.
2 hours,
yes,
the 700, 600 million people of India knew that our father of the nation is.
That's pretty effective. Yeah.
No, so similarly,
communication.
now we have the death of Prime Minister Nehru. Within an hour, the entire nation, not on television, not on radios, the word of mouth spread so fast that the whole country knew what had happened.
Right, right.
Therefore, you know, I am a technologist myself.
You are.
I have spent all my life in science and technology.
Yes, sir.
But I think when I look at all the decentralized communities sitting in different parts of the world, having a style, a way of life, to take them away from where they are and put them in the midst of a fast-moving circuit in the name of what we call progress and modernization. In my opinion, it is not fair.
Oh, it is. You think not?
It is not fair. It is not fair. And also, it is not fair not only to them, it is not fair to ourselves.
Well, okay. I wonder, it's a two-sided sword, isn't it?
Yes.
Because the modernization can bring benefits, penicillin, life.
But that's right.
The problems of modernization.
Up to a point, yes.
Yes, sir.
I tell you, I will specify.
Yes, yes.
Up to a point when you take modernization, I think it's a very major step forward. But there comes the problem. When you find that the kind of modernization you are creating has to be protected by weapons of mass destruction, and everybody all over the world starts spending 1/5 of the total world wealth on producing weapons.
We've been doing that throughout this century, haven't we?
No, but
before.
We have been doing that.
Yeah.
But so therefore, it is now, if half of that money were to be spent over
on
the
livingry.
next 1 year, half of that money were to be spent in the next 10 years, the whole shape of the human history would change. The whole human lifestyle will change. A new culture will develop, a new world will develop. And secondly, we are forgetting one very important thing which I must stress.
Please.
biodiversity.
Yes.
One plant, animal, human, all the biosystem.
Hmm.
The larger the diversity, the greater the survival value.
That's right.
If you go
Specialization
on,
is toward extinction.
if
Yeah.
you go on reducing biodiversity, you are going on bringing extinction not of that species. Now, we have millions of different types of biodiversity.
And we're
in
losing
India.
species every
We
day.
are losing species every
Yeah,
day.
yeah.
And we have lost so much
Yeah.
to the loss of rainforest in
Yes.
Brazil.
That's right.
We have lost by various things in different other parts of the world.
Yeah.
And therefore, I am a great believer in pluralism,
Yeah.
in religious thought. In India, you know what, we have a very strong tradition of pluralism.
Mhm.
Pluralism came how?
Mhm.
Now everybody says, oh, India worships thousands of different gods, which is not right. There is only one God. I agree, there is one God.
Yeah.
But what happens in India is, every human being considers that I have in me the quality of the universe.
Oh, I see. Right. Right.
Now you have 100 different qualities in your system, but you create within yourself images of the qualities which you honor or which you would like to have. So in India, what we do, if a man is an academic, a musician, a singer, he starts worshipping Lord, the goddess Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and things like that. Somebody who wants, you see, compassion and this, she goes to Durga. Somebody wants money and he worships the goddess Lakshmi, and like that.
Yeah.
So what happens is this, our own inner quality,
Are
we
reflected
create
in
images of those qualities outside
to worship,
to worship.
to give guidance.
Achha,
in
now
it, yeah.
what that did to India was that whenever there was a worldwide problem and people in different traditions, different religions, Jewish tradition, Islamic, Parsis, the Zoroastrians,
Yes.
from wherever there was problem, where did they come? To India.
Yeah.
And India embraced them because they say, one more God,
Big tent.
big tent.
Yeah.
So that's why we created a highly pluralistic society. The moment you start changing pluralism
For
to monotheism,
monotheism.
then the problem begins.
That's interesting.
Because monotheism, they say the one way of running economics, so you get form of capitalism. Then you get one way of running God, so there is one God, and everybody wants to say same religion.
That's really
same
interesting.
practices.
Yeah, that's really.
So all these pressures, these are not doing good to us. In fact, they are complicating matters. They are making the world more insecure and creating issues which are not relevant to human dignity and all kinds
Particularly
of...
on a system scale,
System.
including everyone. Yeah.
So these are the kind of area that...
Yeah. If I may, for the last 500 years has been a time of European expansion particularly. There was a time when they were in the caves, when Islam was in flower and so on. But the last 500 years since Columbus or so, there's been colonization all over the world. And some people see globalization now and the fund managers and the economic control of the planet as a neo-colonial pattern without the governmental restraints.
That's right.
And there's no international control over these...
That is right.
Bucky Fuller used to call them the international pirates that run the world.
That is right. No, but I go a step further. I would say that...
And they tend to be Western, although they're coming
No, but I give you one example. Yesterday in the forum meeting...
Yes, at the World Forum, yeah.
Somebody talked about, barter systems.
Yeah.
Do you know that before the colonialism began, all the world trade was on barter system?
Yeah,
India used to trade with China, with Central, Southeast Asia, with the other China, Japan, all the countries of Middle East on barter. And then the British came. They brought not only money, but they brought colonialism.
Yes, right.
And they captured the whole place, and they started making money out of the whole deal one way or the other.
Imposing the European pattern.
On the
which was powerful.
Which was powerful. And then they also, I think the most difficult thing that they did was that they tried to denigrate trivialize, in my opinion, one of the great world cultures which existed in India.
Not only in India and other parts of the
Other
world
parts
as
of the
well,
world.
because
China,
everything
in
else
China,
was
Japan,
right.
everywhere there was great culture.
The
They trivialized these to make their colonialism look good.
That's because they were trying to think they had a universal standard.
Yeah, universal
and then it became parts of nationalism. It got ugly. This ugly century that we've lived in now. I wonder. We've had things in the United. We have the United Nations has emerged. We had Eleanor Roosevelt, who fought very hard to get something that is called a Universal Declaration of Human Rights. That was a hard one. She had to get things. Do you think there's a point in mankind collectively trying to find, maybe I'm arguing differently than perhaps you were making the point, but there are certain universal rights that are unique to humanity universally, and there will be some cultures, for instance, there are some cultures who would say women should be beaten and controlled because they are an inferior part of the human society, and this is a culture, and they say this is our culture. We should not allow women to participate because they are a lesser part of the human experience, and they think this culturally, and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights will say, no, this is not correct. There are larger orders of concern that we have collectively agreed in advancing. There was a time when we had people we had people that were slaves, chattel slaves here. They didn't give the vote to the woman until 1920, and they had it built into certain kinds of religious or cultural notions that they were eminently correct in terms of the way they were interpreting things. But now, is it a pattern to try and reach for universal standards that have a universal appeal to the nature of human nature itself?
I give you one example which happened yesterday.
Yes, sir. Okay, just hot off the press. Huh?
President Wahib was at the State of the World Forum, and he participated in a discussion and made a statement on the government and religion. In that, he made a very wonderful point. He said, what is stated in Islam is very great, but that is coming into conflict with what is stated in the UN's Charter.
Interesting.
Because what is happening is this: while the UN Charter says the world should be run in so and so manner, that this should be the human rights, so therefore this conflict, Islam has to rectify itself so that these human rights can be established. So there are thinking like that going on. On the other hand, in India, for instance, I give you an example. We always talk about the women being not taken care of.
Or you have the tradition, maybe if I could, I don't want to, you have had traditionally a caste system. Where there were...
No, I would define it in another way.
All right, good. I would like to understand it, because it's hard for us to understand.
No, it's like this. The women in India, first point which I want to make is that the government of India has set up what we call a village council, what we call panchayat, the rule of the 5 wise in the village.
The 5 what?
Wise people of the village.
I see, okay.
So what they do is this, that there is an election every year of the panchayats. And do you know who are winning the election? Women.
The women, I hope. Yeah, good, okay.
Not only are they winning the election, they are doing a very darn good job of running the place. And they are very tough. They are not allowing people to, they want to maintain ethical and moral standards of the whole thing. And we see a new change taking place in India for the last 1 decade, from where we started this panchayat rule in the various states of the country.
That's to be applauded.
Very good, very important. Similarly, in the whole tradition, my personal opinion, which is coming today after traveling around the world and after looking at the future in many different ways, that it has become very, very important that we must recognize that pluralism and biodiversity, saving of our own environment, and also bringing compassion, fairness and justice in the human system will alone help us to build an order which I would like my children or you would perhaps like your children to live in.
Decidedly.
And if such an order is not created, if such a situation does not come, I have a very serious reservation that we are going to be
Obliterate ourselves.
Obliterate.
Yeah, because we have that capability.
We have capabilities, we will obliterate ourselves. We cannot permit the greed and the
It's running rampant now.
greed and lust for power
Yeah.
of a few to denigrate the entire human system.
That's very,
Mahatma Gandhi used to say,
yeah.
you know, it is the world has enough for everyone's need, but it doesn't have enough even for one man's greed.
Yeah, that's interesting. Now, I can remember, again, your association with Bucky Fuller, and I am very pleased that you were able to have that, because I think he was, I would put him maybe the most important person of our century. He was a comprehensivist of great, and he used to argue in terms of this question of how are we going to get things right. He said, do not try, and I just wonder if you could address it. He said, don't try to change people's way of thinking. Don't try to change humankind. Change the conditions in which they will interrelate, which will allow the best of them to come out.
Yes.
Now, would you be of a moral nature that we must change people's inner thinking away from greed, or that we should, in a certain sense, design an environment that allows the best to come out in a new kind of way? And one last thing, if I could. He had this postulation saying, from a Western perspective, that we had this technological advancement, and that we were, at an ontologic level, collectively, the whole system, we were transcending, in the abstract, technologically augmented sense, the notion of scarcity in a material sense on a world system. In fact, he felt that we had crossed that 50% mark around 1970 or something, and that we were into a new relationship that would make possible to us organizational assumptions that historically have not been possible. They were all developed within a context of basic scarcity and struggle in a basis of care. Do you think there's anything to be said that we may be transcending scarcity with as an ontologic reality in terms of our institutional structures, that we could allow the human spirit to flower?
There are two aspects. I think I would perhaps go along with Bucky.
He's a good one to go along with. And the young people should be picking up on him.
He's a good one to go along with. But I would like to add something to this. There is in one of the Indian texts, ancient Indian texts, there is one sentence called Aham Brahm Asami, which means I am the image of God.
I see.
Each human being is an image of God. And they have the power of self-realization through the processes of raising the levels of their consciousness. Now that on one side, and the concept of Bucky Fuller, they go very close, because you are connecting the material plane with the psychic and the spiritual plane. And this is a step forward. In a way, it is a greater justification, perhaps the greater potential for achieving what we call the omega point of Teilhard de Chardin. Then it will be the omega point of Bucky Fuller and India.
Yeah, indeed, it could be.
And this is the integration. You see, the question there is, I think what is happening is that we must go deeper into the problem. What is happening is too many things are happening at a superficial level. Now I give you one example of globalization.
Okay, yes.
Now globalization, in the eyes of the Almighty God, all people, whether they are emperors or kings, or whether they are taxi drivers, the men in the street, they are equal. Everyone, in the eyes of the...
okay, that's something you could go into great discussion.
But that's what happens. Now, what is happening, what I say, this is when we globalize, what we are doing is this. We say, now, we want to globalize. We want to make the whole world.
Like
now,
us.
somewhere there are elephants, somewhere there are tigers, somewhere there... Each place has different traditions, different culture, different biodiversity, different the human reaction to things. So all these things are so different. Now how can you put them all together into one thing and then say we are going to globalize?
Well, if you think of the human organism, it's amazing. We now understand the mechanism by which DNA, we have apparently, I understand, I'm not a biologist, we have 10 trillion cells in the human body. They're changing all the time. And every one of some of them are epidermal, some of them are liver, some are brain, there's all kinds of cells. And they're all connected as a system. And every cell has to be operating maximally to have a healthy organism. And every cell, the way the DNA sets up, is in communication with all the other cells.
Not only that.
That might not be a bad metaphor for the human condition.
Not only that. I go a step further.
Yes, sir.
In the Indian thought, the human body is considered to be the replica of the cosmic system. The human body is as complex as the cosmos is. And the ultimate objective of all Indian thought is that human body, when it goes through the processes of nature, where the stars perish, stars are created, stars perish, only lifetimes are different, human beings are created, human beings perish, and they all become a part of the larger cosmic reality.
That's right. Yeah.
So these are the kind of thoughts. Now this therefore means it is become, if we do not want to destroy our universe, our world in which we live in, and if we want to create an order in which, I am not saying people should not be rich, I think I am not doing badly myself. But
would it be a good world if everyone could be affluent?
no, everyone need not be affluent.
No, but would it be good if they could be?
Could we? Yes,
if
why
that
not?
were an option,
No,
because there would be a degree of freedom for the individual.
You know what Henry Ford did here?
Henry Ford made automobiles. I was from Detroit. Henry Ford used to work in my mother's garage before he got started.
That's right. So Henry Ford, what did he do?
He made automobiles.
No, he made automobiles. When he found that they were not selling enough,
he
said increase everybody's salary.
He did. He increased their $5 a day so that he could create a market.
Smart.
Yeah.
So otherwise, what the world needs is Henry Ford's idea. That is, look, you let the whole world become rich and see what happens.
It would be, and also if people are able to be, if you're in a situation where people, we're talking about the runaway greed, which is so obvious now, if people have in their sense, let's say just at a material level and so on, they have a sense that they have a competence. There's an old term, competence. You have sufficient for what you need, and you do not have to be threatened by the environment and something like that. The need for the greed might lessen as people realize that they don't have to have, going after limousines and so on. They might well settle into that by choice.
No, but
if they were,
you know how we believe.
Yes.
In the Indian thought,
yes,
they said that the task of expansion, you satisfy your material need to whatever level you want, you need. And thereafter, you can't expand materially. The only way for human expansion is
cosmic consciousness.
On a consciousness.
Yes, right.
So that is why the Indian thought laid emphasis on this, that in case you wish to expand, you have all the paths open to you, whether you want to do it by the intellectual or by the spiritual or by doing yoga or whatever you want.
Or in the name of a bio or cultural diversity, many of the different flowers could grow. As Mr. Mao said, let 1,000 flowers bloom.
That's right. So whatever you want, basically, ultimately, your ultimate objective is to find the meaning and purpose of life.
That's right. Now, if I could, back to our Mr. Fuller, who you were friendly with, I was in admiration of. And he used to postulate, again, that second law of thermodynamics. He said, he looked about and he said, all systems move toward, or closed systems move toward chaos to the limits of the system. There's a lot of chaos in the universe. And he said the biological process on Earth was an anti-entropic function. There was an important function that was there was a purpose to biological and human evolutionary purpose. And he said it was move across entropy and bring increased patterns of conscious understanding to the process, the cosmic process of which we are a part. And that we may be reaching a point now where we have this destructive capability, the technology, where we could render the habitat of this earth incapable of the continuation of our species, or we may be at a point where we could be inclusive of everyone and creating a sort of, in a certain sense, a synergistic resonancy of a liberated humanity that would inter-accommodate us resonatingly to universe at a level transcendent of what we've been throughout the human experience, and we may be coming to a new relationship to the cosmic consciousness at a level higher than what we've had throughout the human experience?
Yes.
Do you think this is a possibility at the time in which you and I sit and talk?
It is possibility.
An extremely exciting and crucial time we live in.
It is possibility, and not only that, but I'll go a step further on
Please.
this to clarify this. The question is, we have to ask ourselves this question. Is our organizational structure, is our conduct, is our paradigm, is our situation today permits us to do this?
Yeah.
Or does it narrow us down to a different level?
Yes, right. Yeah.
This is the problem.
Well, many of the paradigms that we are operating in terms of were based upon a traditional pattern of scarcity as an ontologic reality. There's a new one emerging, so we need a new economic paradigm, capital formation, and the ability for us to do what we're technologically capable of doing, but we don't have financial and political systems that let us do what we're capable of doing.
That is number one, and number two is this. We are getting isolated from the human spiritual conditioning, which is equally vital to go along with your desire for material expression.
Yeah, right, right.
No, we are not allowing that to happen, that material conditioning.
Yeah. No, we're allowing the material conditioning to run rampant.
Rampant, and not allowing it, the spiritual and psychic conditioning, where larger human interests are taken into account.
Yeah.
These are the issues which, in my opinion, are very, very important.
They've been with us since Cro-Magnon days, I suppose, but they come to a crucial focus at these days in the evolution of universal consciousness.
Only difference there is, you know, in the old days they used to fight their war with sticks.
Yes. Now.
And they used to fight their war with rules.
Yeah.
You know, I know in Mahabharata story, which is the big mythological story of India, there, you know, when the sun set, everybody laid down arms and they used to go and sit and eat with each other. And when the sun rose, they were animals and they will take up arms. And
the gods would laugh.
And the rules were followed.
Yes.
Now the question there is, there are no rules of the game.
Yeah, no, it's a horror.
So therefore we have to follow them.
We have to follow those, and we have to try and draw upon the wisdom of the past as well as what we can muster now. And if I may say so, Bucky Fuller, Teilhard de Chardin people, and you, sir, are very much to be thanked for your contributions as a friend of the universe to understanding this consciousness and how we can do this. I thank you really very much for all your work and for participating in conversations. It's a great pleasure.
Thank you.
And I would remind you in the audience, it's been your pleasure to have the perceptions of J.C. Kapur, who is a friend of the universe, based in India, but traveling about and traveling about the planet. It was a friend of many of the most important thinkers of our era, and happy to have been able to share his perceptions with you. We invite you to tune in. We'll be coming back again next week on Conversations. That's it for now. Mr. Kapur, once again, thank you really very much for all your work and for coming in.
Thank you. Thank you.
Until next time. So there's a lot to cover. You know.
We have done it.
Well, they're just running the credits now and that sort of thing. But there's so many. We just scratched the surface of the things that. But I think this forum is a good idea. I wonder if there shouldn't. I mean, this World Forum that they're putting together. There shouldn't be more of them. Do you have such going in India where they try to get the intellectual leadership of the world? We should have maybe a television channel that presents the leadership.
Yes, they do that, but
Who does?
I personally created under Kapur Surya Foundation. There is a forum which meets once a year with 20 top thinkers from the world.
20?
And they sit under a tree.
Who? Yeah, right.
They sit under a tree.
Yeah.
And then 3 days they dialogue, no speeches.
Not a banyan tree.
No banyan. Yeah. No, it's a very beautiful flowering tree.
Yeah.
Under that we sit. And
you should videotape those dialogues.
We have got
and you can
that.
distribute it
I
around
can send you something.